Sound alerts is on. In case people want me to know they're here. I'm visible because I am here. Hello? In case people want me to know they're here. Okay. Okay. Why do I keep finishing? Oh, come on. Stream, don't be that way. The hell? I'm visible. Come on. Hello? In case people want me to know they're here. Okay. Discord, stop being a pain. The hell? Are we gonna stay on? Is Discord gonna continue being a nuisance? Okay, Discord's cooperating now. That's nice of it to do. Do. And I say I'm reading a new old book because it's only new for you, it's not new for me. Oh, come on, computer. Why you gotta be this way? I just want to read a book. Come on. Why is everything running slow? Oh, man, computer? Why you gotta be like this? Oh, computer. Da. Okay, it's on there. Put it in the Discords. Come on, computer. What the hell? Da, 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 da. Come on. Discord, stop acting up. Okay. Come on, laptop. You were running perfectly fine earlier. Don't give me technical issues now. Of course, I shouldn't listen to talk about Bruno before doing this. Because now that's in my head. That song infects my brain. I have to put another suggestive song like. Okay. To organize better. Anyway. Cubs. Come on, stream. There we go. I am live. It says so. Bar's open. But I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm going to go to the storytelling screen. So there's that. The hell? Hello? Where's my picture? Where the hell is my picture? There we go. What is wrong with you tonight, OBS? Honestly. Anyway, back to the music. I don't know if any of you Cubs recognize the song. But it was written by a priest from, let's see, this song was written, when was it written? Let me find out. This was written in 1865. Was it? No, the song was written in 1864. The music was written a few years later. But the song you're listening to is Onward Christian Soldiers. Probably one of the more well-known things that the author of tonight's book is known for. It's always going to be an interesting stream when you start out with a song written by a priest, right? But he was a priest and a scholar. He did a lot of traveling and he collected a lot of stories. a lot of folklore, and wrote a lot of hymns. Of course, in the Victorian era, it's always cool to know about what's going on then. But I'm going to be reading a book written by this man. It's one of several. I haven't lucked out in finding any copies of the others yet. The copy of the book that I'm going to be reading. Let's see, when was this copy printed? Come here. I'll say the book was originally written in 1865. So it's a little old. Had to be translated, because quite a bit of it's in French. I recently, if I had had the $9,000, I would have bought one of the first editions of this, but since I'm not getting that kind of fundraising done, and believe me, I begged, borrowed, and no one's exactly dumping money in my coffee account, so it would have been awesome if I could have gotten the first edition of this book. Just because it would have been an absolute freaking boon for my research. But since I did not, I'm going to have to deal with this more recent copy. I cannot find a printer's mark on this one. When is this copy from? Damn it. Anyway, it was printed by the Nonesuch Publishing Company out of Dublin, Ireland. Nice place. Wish I could go there. That would involve having money that I don't have. But, and it's a big but. You want to know what book I'm looking at? I'll post the cover for you. It is a pretty cool read, honestly. But, and remember, this was written by a priest. The Book of Werewolves. Oh, I know you're looking at me and going, why would you have a book on werewolves? Well, duh. Look at me. Why wouldn't I? I mean, come on. Did you look up the information on St. Christopher? He was a dog man. Admittedly, not me, but, wolves get around. But anyway, let me go ahead and start with the introduction on this. Honestly, it's a pretty cool book. And he wrote the introduction himself, so. Introductory. I shall never forget the walk I took one night in Vienne, after having accomplished the examination of an unknown druidical relic, the Pierre l'Abbé, at La Rondelle, near Champigny. I had learned of the existence of a cromlech only on my arrival at Champigny in the afternoon, and I had started to visit the curiosity without calculating the time it would take me to reach it and to return. Suffice it to say that I discovered a venerable pile of grey stones as the sun set, and that I expended the last lights of the evening in planning and sketching. Then I turned to face homeward. My walk of about 10 miles had wearied me, coming at the end of a long day's posting, and I had lamed myself in scrambling over some stones to a gauche relic. I will apologize, I'm having trouble reading some of this because, wow, it's wordy. A small hamlet was at no great distance, and I betook myself thither in the hopes of hiring a trap to convey me to the post house, but I was disappointed. Few in the place could speak French, and the priest, when I applied to him, assured me that he believed there was no better conveyance in the place than the common charro, with its solid wooden wheels, nor was a riding horse to be procured. The good man offered to house me for the night, but I obliged to decline, as my family intended starting early on the following morning. Out spake then the mayor. Monsieur, never go back tonight across the flats because of the, and his voice dropped, the loup-garou. He says he must return, replied the priest to his patus. But who will go with him? Ah, mais le curé. It is all very well for one of us to accompany him, but think of coming back alone. Then two must go with him, said the priest, and you can take care of each other as you return. Pigou tells me that he saw the werewolf only this day, night, said a peasant. He was down by the hedge of the buckwheat field, and the sun had set, and he was thinking of coming home, when he heard a rustle on the far edge of the hedge. He looked over, and there stood the wolf, as big as a calf against the horizon, its tongue out, and its eyes glaring like marsh fires. Mon Dieu, catch me going over the Margrat tonight. Why, what could two men do if they were attacked by that wolf fiend? Not much. It is tempting Providence, said one of the elders of the village. No man must accept the help of God if he throws himself wilfully in the way of the danger. It is not so, monsieur. I heard you say as much from the pulpit on the first Sunday of Lent, preaching from the gospel. That is true, observed several, shaking their heads. His tongue hanging out and his eyes glaring like marsh fires, said the confident Picot. Mon Dieu, if I met the monster I should run, quoth another. I quite believe you, Cortrez. I can answer for it that you would, said the mayor. As big as a calf, through the Picot's friend. If the loup-garou were only a natural wolf, why then, you see, the mayor cleared his throat, you see we could think nothing of it, but M. le Curé is a fiend. A worse than fiend, a man-fiend. A worse than man-fiend, a man-wolf fiend. I feel rather insulted by that, honestly. But what is the young monsieur to do? Asked the priest, looking from one to another. Never mind, said I, who had been quietly listening to the Petro, which I understood. Never mind, I will walk back myself, and if I meet the loup-garou, I will crop his ears and tail and send them to M. le Curé with my compliments. Right. A sigh of relief from the assembly as they found themselves clear of the difficulty. At last and guests, said the mayor, shaking his head, as though he meant that an Englishman might face the devil with impunity. Yes, they would. Melancholy flat was the Maris, looking desolate enough by day, but now, in the gloaming, tenfold as desolate. The night was perfectly clear, and of a soft blue-gray tinge, illuminated by the new moon, a curve of light approaching its western bed. The horizon reached a fen, blackened with pools of stagnant water from which the frogs kept an incessant trill through the summer night. Heath and fern covered the ground, but near the water grew dense mosses of flag and bulrush, amongst which the light wind sighed wearily. Here and there stood a sandy knoll, capped with firs, looking like black splashes against the gray sky. Not a sign of habitation anywhere, only the trace of men being the white, straight road extending for miles across the fen. That this district harbored wolves is not improbable, and I confess that I armed myself with a strong stick at the first clump of trees through which the road dived. This was my first introduction to werewolves, and the circumstance of finding the superstition still so prevalent first gave me the idea of investigating the history and the habits of these mythical creatures. I must acknowledge that I have been quite unsuccessful in obtaining a specimen of the animal, but I have found its traces in all directions, and just as the paleontologist has constructed the labyrinthodon out of its footprints in mud and one splinter of bone, so may this monograph be completed and accurate. Although I have no chained werewolf before me, I may sketch and describe from my life. The traces left are indeed numerous, though, and though perhaps, like the dodo or the Dinometris, the werewolf may have become extinct in our age, yet he has left his stamp on the classic antiquity. He has trodden deep in the northern snows, has ridden roughshod through the medievals, and has howled amongst Oriental can't speak Oriental sepulchres. He belonged to a bad breed, and we are quite content to be freed from him and his kindred, the vampire and the ghoul. Yet who knows? We may be a little too hasty in concluding that he is extinct. We may still prowl the Abyssinian forests, range over the Asiatic steppes, and be found howling dimly in the padded brown of the Hunwell or the Bedlam. In the following pages, I designed to investigate the notices of werewolves to be found in the ancient writers of classic antiquity, those contained within the northern sagas, and lastly, the numerous details afforded by the medieval authors. In connection with this, I will give sketch to a modern folklore relating to lycanthropy. It will then be seen that under the veil of mythology lies a solid reality, that a floating superstition holds solution in a positive truth. This I shall show in the innate cravings for blood implanted in certain natures, restrained under ordinary circumstances, but breaking forth occasionally, accompanied with hallucination, leading in most cases to cannibalism. I shall give instances of persons thus affected, who were believed by others, and who believed themselves to be transformed into beasts, and who, in the paroxysms of their madness, committed numerous murders and devoured their victims. I shall give instances of persons suffering from the same passion for blood, who murdered for their mere gratification of their natural cruelty, but who were subject to hallucinations, nor were addicted to cannibalism. I shall also give instances of persons filled with these same propensities who murdered and ate their victims, but who were perfectly free from hallucination. Everybody get all that? Basically, that is him saying he will go through the lore and history of werewolves and multiple cultures and try to gain reality from folklore. And hopefully I will be able to read his words better than I have been, because, as I said, his linguistic skills, at least his writing skills, are a lot better than my linguistic. Chapter 2. Lycanthropy among the ancients. Before I get too far into this, they were talking about a werewolf, right? How did he describe the moon? It was a new moon, bare sliver of one. So the whole thing about lunar cycle things, yeah, not so. Okay, so moon does not have any effect on people being werewolves. Sorry. First thing he talks about in here. Anyway, Lycanthropy among the ancients. Definition of lycanthropy: Marcellus Titius, Virgil, Herodotus, Ovid, Pliny, Agrippus, the story of Petronius, Arcadian legends, and the explanation offered. Basically, lots of stories, and then he's going to explain. What is lycanthropy? The change of man or woman into the form of a wolf, either through magical means, so as to enable him or her to gratify the taste of human flesh, or through judgment of the gods in punishment for some great offense. This is the popular definition. Truly, it consists in a form of madness, as such may be found in asylums. Yeah, so if you're a werewolf, you're nuts. No, that's just what he's saying. What the classical definition is. Among the ancients, this kind of insanity went by the names lycanthropy, coanthropy, or boanthropy, because those affected with it believed themselves to be turned into wolves, dogs, or cows. Where cow? No. But in the north of Europe, as we shall see, the shape of the bear, and in Africa that of the hyena, are often selected in preference. A mere matter of taste and locality. I'm not even going to try to read the Greek, but according to Marcellus Sittius, whose poem, I cannot read that. It is literally Greek to me. Let me see if I can translate it. Hold on. Okay, still comes up as Tabayo Boxitwal, so the Tabayo Boxitwal. A fragment exists. Men are attacked with the madness chiefly in the beginning of the year, and become most furious in February, retiring the nights of long cemeteries, and living precisely in the manner of dogs and wolves. Of course, that being in Greek. That be in February, that'll probably be Lupercalia. So, there's that. Horny Werewolf Day. Valentine's Day. Virgil writes in his 8th Eclogue, Cerebus secet ponto mihi recta vena. Is dedit mores, nascular polorima ponto. Zigo escape lumpe filiali, extus silvis, moralim sape animis imis sulfuris. Atic salasatil vide transversal messes. Did you get that? Basically, at this point in spring, become sponsor to the point of becoming wolf-like and phase. He changes animals in the sepulchres, during which life transfuse masses. I'm so rusty on my Greek. You'd think after a few centuries I'd be better at it. And Herodotus, it seems that the Nerti are sorcerers, if one is to believe that the Scythians and the Greeks established the Scythia, for each Nerian changes himself once in the year into the form of a wolf, and he continues in that form for several days, after which he resumes his former shape. Yeah, that's the translation of it. Doesn't really talk about Narnians, does it? But oh well. See also Pontofius Mela, Library 2C1. There is a fixed time for each Narian, at which they change, if they like, into wolves, and back again into their former condition. So translated twice. That one seems a lot easier to read. But the most remarkable story among the ancients is that related to Ovid and his metamorphosis of Lycaon, king of Arcadia, who, entertaining Jupiter one day, set before him a hash of human flesh to prove his omnipotence, whereupon the god transferred him into a wolf. And there's the original story. Try to feed the god human flesh, he turns you into the wolf. Here's the actual information on it. In vain he attempted to speak. From that very instant his jaws were besputtered with foam, and he only thirsted for blood, as he raged amongst flocks and panted for slaughter. His vesture was changed into hair, his limbs became crooked, a wolf. He retains yet large trace of his ancient expression. Hairy as he was before, his countenance rabid, his eyes glitter vaguely still, and the picture of fury. Pliny relates from Evanthus that on the festival of Jupiter Lycaeus, one of the family of the Antis was afflicted by lot and conducted to the brink of Arcadian Lake. Then he hung his clothes on a tree and plunged into the water, whereupon he was transformed into a wolf. 9 years after, if he had not tasted human flesh, he was at liberty to swim back and resume his former shape, which had in the meantime become aged, as though he wore it for 9 years. So basically, someone in the family has to go to the lake, strip, and go out for a swim. And if they can survive 9 years as a wolf without eating human flesh, they can turn back. Gropes relates that Demetrius, having assisted in an Arcadian human sacrifice to Jupiter Lycaeus, ate of the flesh and was at once transformed into a wolf, in which shape he prowled for about 10 years, after which he recovered his human form and took part in the Olympic Games. Because wolves are awesome athletes, apparently. The following story is from Petronis. My master had gone to Capua to sell some old clothes. I seized the opportunity and persuaded our guests to bear me company for about 5 miles out of town, for he was a soldier and as bold as death. We set out at cockcrow, and the moon shone bright as day, when, coming among some monuments, my man began to converse with the stars, whilst I jogged along singing and counting them. Presently I looked back after him, and saw him strip and lay his clothes by the side of the road. My heart was in my mouth in an instant. I stood like a corpse, when, in a crack, he was turned into a wolf. Don't think I'm joking. I would not tell you a lie for the finest fortune in the world. But to continue, after he was turned into a wolf, he set up a howl and made straight for the woods. At first I did not know whether I was on my head or my heels, but at last, going to take up his clothes, I found them turned into stone. The sweat steamed from me, and never expected to get over it. Melissa began to wonder why I walked so late. Had you come a little sooner, she said, you might have at least lent us a hand, for a wolf broke into the farm and butchered all of our cattle. But though he got off, it was no laughing matter for him, for a servant of ours ran him through with a pike. Hearing this, I could not close an eye, but as soon as the daylight, I ran home like a pillar that had been stuck in the east to my pack. Coming to a place where his clothes had been turned to stone, I saw nothing but a pool of blood, and when I got home, I found my soldier lying in bed, like an ox in a stall, surgeon dressing his neck. I saw at once that he was a fellow who could change his skin, versipalis, and never after could I eat bread with him. No, not if you would have killed me. Ah, difficulty reading this. Sorry. Those who have taken a different view of the case are welcome to their opinion. If I tell you a lie, may your Argenti confound me. Whew. As everyone knows, Jupiter changed himself into a bull. Hecate became a bitch, Actaeon a stag, and the comrades of Ulysses were transformed into swine. And the daughters of Proteus fled through the fields, believing themselves to be cows, and would not allow anyone to come near them, lest they be caught and yoked. St. Augustine declared that in his De Civiltate Dei that he knew an old woman who was said to turn men into asses by their enchantments. Apuleius has left this charming romance of the Golden Ass, which the hero, through injurious use of magical salve, is transformed into the long-eared animal. It is to be observed that the chief seat of lycanthropy was Arcadia, and has been plausibly suggested that the cause might be traced to the following circumstance. The natives were pastoral people, and would consequently suffer severely from the attacks and depredations of wolves. They would naturally institute sacrifices to obtain deliverance from this pest and secure for their flocks. The sacrifice consisted in the offering of a child, and it was instituted by Lycaon. From the circumstance of sacrifice being human and the peculiarity of the name of its origin arose the myth. Oh, damn, that's hard to read. But, on the other hand, the story is far too widely spread for us to attribute it to an accidental origin, or to trace it to a local source. Half the world believes, or believed in, werewolves, and they were supposed to haunt the Norwegian forests by those who had never remotely been connected with Arcadia. And the superstition had probably struck deep into the roots of the Scandinavian and Teutonic minds ages before Lycaon existed. And we only have to glance at Oriental literature to see it firmly engulfed in the imagination of the Easterns. Yeah. I need to do some vocal exercises before trying to read these. It's a lot easier to read than it is to enunciate. I'll say that now, Cubs. You can actually find copies of this book online. It's like PDF form everywhere. Technically, it's too old to even be considered for copyright. Just certain publications of it can still be held. Chapter 3, The Werewolf in the North. These are the Norse traditions in which the change was effected. Vakolander Conversa, instances of the Volsunga saga, Hrolfs Kraka, Frostipon, Helgaviva, from the Vatsnilda saga, and the Rabicha saga. I apologize for any of my Scandinavian friends who might be listening to this, but this is your region, so. In Norway and Iceland, certain men were said to be Elgi Einhammer, not of one skin, an idea which has its roots in paganism. The full form of this strange superstition was that men could take up upon their bodies the natures of those beings whose bodies they assumed. The second adopted shape was called the same name as the original shape, Hammer. and its expression made use of to designate the transition of one body to another. Was at Skipta Homan, or at Hamas, was the expedition made in the second form, was the Hamfor. By this transfiguration, extraordinary powers were acquired. The natural strength of the individual was doubled or quadrupled. He acquired the strength of the beast in whose body he's traveled in addition to his own. Man less invigorated was called Hamrammer. Hamrammer. Sorry, again, my pronunciations are going to be horrible at this. And the manner in which the change is effected varied. At times, the dress of skin was cast over the body, and at once the transformation was complete. At others, the human body was deserted, and soul entered the second form, leaving the first body in a cataleptic state to all appearances dead. The second hammer was either borrowed or created for that purpose. There was a third manner of producing this effect. It was by incantation. But then the form of the individual remained unaltered, though the eyes of all beholders were charmed, so that they would only appear to perceive them as the selected form. Having assumed some bestial shape, the man who is Iggy and Hammer is only to be recognized by his eyes, which by no power can be changed. See, the eyes are the ones of the soul. Even if you're a beast, you can still be seen by that. He then pursues his course, follows the instincts of the beast whose body he has taken, yet without quenching his own intelligence. So Viking werewolves are still human intelligence. So there, He is able to do what the body of the animal can do, and do what he, as man, can do as well. He may fly or swim if he is in the shape of a bird or fish. If he has taken the form of a wolf, or he goes on to Gengrid, or a wolf's ride, he is full of rage and malignancy of the creatures whose powers and passions he assumed. I will give a few instances of each of the three methods of changing bodies mentioned above. Freya and Frigg had their falcon dresses, in which they visited very different locations on Earth. And Loki is said to have borrowed these, and to have appeared so precisely like a falcon that he would have escaped detection, but for the malicious twinkle of his eyes. In the Varhandar Kliva, in the following passage, this has English translations, so I'm just going to read the English, okay? Because I can't read. From the south flew the maidens, or with the gloom, avid the young, to fix destinies. They on sea strand sat them to rest. These damsels of the south, for linen spun. One of them took Edgel and Press, fair mates in her dazzling arms. Another a Swanhit, who wore swan feathers, and the third, their sister, pressed the white neck of Iceland. Okay. The introduction of Sormo tells that these charming young ladies were caught when they had laid their swan skins beside them on the shore, and were consequently not with the condition toughly. And the manner werewolves' dress is used, the following curious passage from the wild saga of the Voslings. It is not to be told that Sigmund sought Sinfot to help him in the revenge. He wished first to test his powers. So during the summer they plunged deep into the woods and slew men for their goods. When Sigmund saw he was quite the Volsung's stock, now it fell out that they went through the forest collecting monies, that they lighted upon the house in which two men were sleeping, with great gold rings on them. They had dealings with witchcraft, for wolfskins hung on the house above them. It was the 10th day that they might come out of their second state. They were king's sons, Sigmund and selfish, got into the habits, could not get out of them again. And the nature of the original beast came over them, and they howled like wolves. They learned both of them to howl. Now they went into the forest, and each took their own course. They made the agreement together that they should try their strength against as many as 7 men, but not more, and that he who wore the strife should utter the wolf's howl. Do not fail in this, said Sigmund, for you are young and daring, and men would be glad to chase you. Now each went on his own course. After they had parted, Sigmund found men, so he howled. Then Sinfjötl heard that, ran up and slew them all. Then they separated. As Sinfjötl had not been long of the wood before he met with 11 men, he fell upon them and slew every one of them. Then he was tired and flung himself under an oak to rest. Up came Sigmund and said, Why did you not call out? Sinfjötl replied, What was the need of asking your help to kill 11 men? Sigmund flew at him and rent him so that he fell, for he had bitten through his throat. Is my audio right? I can't hear my own self. Okay. Why am I not hearing it? Is it recording? Is it going out? I can't tell. Stream Cable Network error. Okay. That day they could not leave their wolf forms. Sigmund laid him on his back and bare him home to the hall, sat beside him, and said, Deuce take the wolf arms. Why is it not? Oh, come on. Hello? Testing. Why am I not hearing anything? Okay. There is another curious story of a werewolf in the same saga, which I must relate. Now he did as she requested, and hewn down a great piece of timber, and cast it across the feet of those 10 brothers seated in a row, now in the forest. Okay, my stream's back up. Testing. And there they sat all that day until the night. I'm not hearing anything. And at midnight there came an old she-wolf out of the forest to them, and they sat in the stalks, and she was both huge and grimly. Now she fell upon them. Another curious story of a werewolf in the same saga. Bit him to death. Now he did as she requested. Now she fell upon them, and after she had eaten him all up, she went away. The next morning, Signy sent a trusty man to her brothers to know how it fared with him. When he returned, he told her that the death of one, and that grieved her much, for she feared it might fare thus with them all. and that she would be unable to assist them. In short, 9 nights followed, and came the she-wolf at night. She devoured them one after another until all were dead except Sigmund, and he was left alone. So when the 10th night came, Signy sent her trusty man to Sigmund, her brother, with the honey in his hand, and said that he should smear it over the face of Sigmund, and to fill his mouth with it. Now he went to Sigmund and did as he bid, after which he returned home. And during that night came the she-wolf. She was her wont, and reckoned to devour him like his brothers. But now she snuffed him, where the honey was smeared, and began to lick his face over with her tongue, precisely thrust her tongue into his mouth. He bore it ill, but bit into the tongue of the she-wolf. She sprang up and tried to break loose, setting her feet against the stalk so as to snap it asunder. But he held firm and ripped her tongue out by the roots, so that it was the death of the wolf. It is the opinion of some men that this beast was the mother of King Sigurd, and that she had taken this form upon her through devilry and witchcraft. There is another story bearing on this subject in the Hrolfs Saga Kraka, which is pretty. It is as follows. In the north of Norway, in Upland Dales, reigned a king called Hring, and he had a son named Bjorn. Now it fell out that the queen died, much lamented by the king and all. The people advised him to marry again, and so he sent men south to get him a wife. A gale and fierce storm fell upon them, so that they had to return with helm and run before the wind, and so that they came north to Finnmark, where they spent the winter. One day they went inland and came to a house in which sat 2 beautiful women, who greeted them well, and inquired whence they had come. They replied by giving the account of their journey and their errand, and then asked the women who they were, and why they were alone, and far from the haunts of men, although they were comely and engaging. The elder replied that her name was Ingeborg, and that her daughter was Kivit, and that she was Finn King's sweetheart. Messengers decided they would return home if Kivit would come with them and marry King Hring. She agreed, and they took with them and met the king, who was pleased with her, and had his wedding feast made. And she said he cared not, though she was not rich. But the king was very odd, and the queen soon found out. There was a carle whom the farm not far from the king's dwelling. He had a wife and a daughter, who was but a child. Her name was Bera. She was very young and lovely. Bjorn, the king's son, and Bera, the carle daughter, were once, as children, to play together, and they loved each other well. The carle was well-to-do, and had been out herring his young days. He was a Doi champion. Bjorn and Bera loved each other more and more, and they were often together. Time passed, and nothing worth relating occurred. Bjorn, the king's son, waxed strong and tall, and he was very skilled in all manly exercises. Manly exercises. King Hring was often absent for long, harrying foreign shores, and Fitz remained at home and governed the land. She was not liked of the people. She was always very pleasant with Bjorn, but he cared little for her. It fell at once that the king Hring went a mound, and spake with his queen that Bjorn should remain at home with her to assist with the government, for he thought that advisable, the queen being haughty and inflated with pride. The king told his son Bjorn that he is to remain home and rule the land with his queen. Bjorn replied that he disliked the plan and that he had no love for the queen, But the king was inflexible and left the land with a great following. Bjorn walked home after his conversation with the king and went up to his place, ill pleased and red as blood. The queen came to speak with him and to cheer him, spake friendly with him, but he bade her to be off. She obeyed him that time. She often came to talk with him, and said how much pleasanter it was for them to be together, that he had on fellow like ring in the house. I again apologize for butchering these names because I know I am. Bjorn resented this speech and stuck her in a box with the art, struck her a box in the ear and bade her depart, and he spurned her from him. She replied that this was ill done to drive and thrust her away, and you think it better, Bjorn, to sweetheart a Carl's daughter, than to have my love and favor and find peace of condescension, and with the disgrace it is to you. But before long something will stand in the way of your fancy and your folly. Then she struck at him with a wolf-skin glove, and said that he should become a rabid and grim wild bear, and you shall eat nothing but your father's sheep, which you shall slay for your food, and never shall you leave this state. Yeah. After Bjorn disappeared and none knew what had become of him, the men sought out, found him not, and was to be expected. We must now relate how the king's sheep were slaughtered, half a score at a time. It was the work of a grey bear, both huge and grimly. One evening it chanced that the Carl's daughter had seen the savage bear coming towards her, looked tenderly at her, and she fancied that she recognized the eyes of Bjorn, the king's son. So she made a slight attempt to escape. Then the beast retreated, but she followed it till she came to a cave. Now when she entered the cave, there stood before her a man, who greeted Bera, the Carl's daughter, and she recognized him, for it was Bjorn, the king's son. Bjorn, Hring's son. Were they to meet? So they were together in the cave a while, for she would not part with him when she had the chance of being with him. But he said this was not proper, and that she should be there by him, for by day he was a beast, and by night a man. He returned from his harrying, and he was told of the news and what had taken place in his absence, now that Bjorn, his son, had vanished, and how that a monstrous beast was in the country, and was destroying the flocks. The queen urged the king to have the beast slain, but he delayed a while. One night Bear and Bjorn were together. He said to her, "Methinks tomorrow will be the day of my death, for they will come out to hunt me down. But for myself I care not, for it is little pleasure to live with a charm upon me, and my only comfort is that we are together. But for now our union must be broken. I will give you the ring which is under the left hand. You will see troop. You will see the troop of hunters tomorrow coming to seek me. When I am dead, go to the king and ask him to give you what is under the beast's left front leg. You will consent." He spoke to her of many things till the bear's form stole over him, and he went forth a bear. She followed him and saw the great body of hunters had come over the mountain ridges, and a number of dogs with them. The bear rushed away from the cavern, and the dogs and the king's men came upon him, and there was a desperate struggle. He wearied many men before he was brought to bay, and had slain all the dogs. But now they made a ring about him. He ranged around it, but could see no means of escape. So he turned to where the king stood, and he seized the man who stood next to him, rent him asunder. Then was the bear so exhausted that he cast himself down flat, and at once the men rushed upon him and slew him. Carl's daughter saw this, and went up to the king, and said, Sire, wilt thou grant me that which is under the bear's left foreshoulder? The king consented. By this time the men had nearly flayed the bear. Bear went up and plucked away the ring, and kept it, and none saw what she took, nor had they looked for anything. The king asked her who she was, and she gave a name, but not a true name. The king now went home, and Bear was in his company. The queen was very joyous and treated her well, and asked who she was, but Bear answered as before. The queen now made a great feast, and had the bear's flesh cooked for the banquet. Carl's daughter was in the bower of the queen, and could not escape, for the queen had a suspicion of who she was. She then came to Bear with a dish, quite unexpectedly, and on it was the bear's flesh, and she bade Bear eat it. She would not do so. Here is a marvel, said the queen. You reject the offer which the queen herself deigns to make you. Take it at once, or something worse will befall you. She bit before her, and he ate that bite. The queen cut another piece and looked into her mouth and saw that one grain of the bite had gone down, but Bear spat out the rest in her mouth. And since she would take no more, though she were tortured or killed. What is wrong with my stream? Please tell me this is going out. Maybe you have had sufficient, said the queen and laughed. That's from Hrolfr Saga Kraka, chapters 24 through 27 condensed. I like the fact he notarized everything in this book. The first song of Finnar Finnholf, we have the following verse. When this peril Finn saw that witchcraft did him harm, and he charged himself into a werewolf, and he slew many thus, and following the form of the second code of Helga Hundingsmanna, Kraka, chapters 24 through May the blade bite which thou brandish only on thyself when it chimes on thy head, and avenged will be the death of Helgi when thou, as a wolf, wanderest into the woods, knowing nor fortune nor any pleasure, having no meat save ravings of corpses. When this peril Finn saw that witchcraft did him harm, and he charged himself into a werewolf, and he slew many thus, and following the form of the second code of Helga Hundingsmanna, chapters 24 through May the blade bite which thou brandish only on thyself when it's. In all of these cases, it changes in the form, which should now come to instances in which the person who is changed has double shape, and the soul animates one from another. The Anglarian saga says of Odin that he changed form. The bodies lay as though sleeping or dead, that he was a bird, or a beast, or fish, or a woman, and went in twinkling to the distant islands, or distant lands, doing his own and other people's business. In like manner, the Danish king Harold sent a warlock to Iceland in the form of a whale, whilst his body lay stiff and stark at home. In all of these cases, it changes in the form, which should now come to instances in which the person who is changed has double shape, and the soul. Sorry, now I'm going to get echoes. Where was I? The already quoted saga of Hrolf Krake gives another example, where Odvar Bjarkli, in the shape of a huge bear, fights desperately with his enemy, which has surrounded the hall of his king, whilst his human body lies drunkenly beside the embers within. In the Vatsdela saga, there is a curious account of three Finns, who were shut up in the hut for 3 nights, and ordered Inigmund, a Norwegian chief, to visit Iceland and inform him of the lie of the country where he was to settle. Their bodies became rigid, and they sent their souls to Erend, and, on awakening at the end of 3 days, gave an accurate description of Vetzdal, in which England was eventually to establish himself. But the saga does not relate whether these Finns rejected their souls into the bodies of birds or beasts. The third manner of transformation mentioned was that in which the individual has not changed himself, but in the eyes of others were bewitched, so that they could not detect him, but saw him only under a certain form. Of this, there were several examples in the sagas. For instance, the Hraunmundr saga, Gripasnar, and in the Frostabrerða saga, but I will translate the most curious, which is that of Odd, Katla's son, in the Arbigja saga. Here, housewife of Bafalid, sent word to Bolstad that she was aware of the fact that Odd, Katla's son, had hewn Odd's hand. Now when Thorin and Arknell heard that, they rode from home with 12 men. They spent the night in Mahalflid and rode the next morning to Holt, and Odd was the only man in the house. Katla sat on the high seat spinning yarn, and she bade Odd to sit beside her. Also, she begged for women to sit in her place, to hold their tongues, for, she said, I shall do all the talking. Now when Ar and his company arrived, they walked straight in, and when they came into the chamber, Katla greeted Arnkiel and asked the news. He replied that there was none. He inquired that after Odd, Katla said that he had gone to Redvak. We shall ransack the house, though, quoth Ankel. Be it so, replied Katla, and she ordered a girl to carry the light before them, and unlock the different parts of the house. All they saw was Katla spinning yarn off her distaff. Now they searched the house to find no Odd, so they depart. But when they had gone a little way from the garth, Ankel stood still and said, How know we but Katla had hoodwinked us, and that the staff in her hand was nothing more than Odd? Not impossible, said Thorin. Let us turn back. So they did, and when those at Holt saw that they were returning, Katla said to her maids, Still hold your places, Odd and I shall go out. Now, as they approached the door, she went into the porch and began to comb and clip the hair of her son Odd. Hanno came to the door and saw that Katla was disangling his mane and his beard and smoothing its wool. So he and his men went to the house and found not Odd. Katla lay against the bench, so they thought it could not have been Odd. They went away. However, when they came to the spot where they had turned before, Arnkel said, Think you not that Odd may have been the goat's form? There's no saying, replied Thorinir. But if we bet, we will lay hands on Katla. We can try our luck again, said Arknell, and see what comes of it. So they returned. Now when they were seen on their way back, Katla bade Odd follow her, and she led him into the ash heap, and told him to lie there, and not to stir on any account. But when Arnkel and his men came to the farm, they rushed into the chamber and saw Katla seated in her place spinning. She greeted them and said that their visits followed with rapidity. Arknell replied that what she said is true. His comrades took the distaff and cut it into twain. Come now, said Katla, you cannot do that. You cannot say when you get home that you have done nothing. You have chopped up my distaff. Then Arnkel and the rest hunted high and low for Odd, but could not find him until they saw nothing living in the place beside the boar pig which lay underneath the ash heap. So they went away once more. Well, when they got halfway to Medclaf, came Gerd to meet them with her workmen. They had not gone the right way to work in seeking Odd, but she would help them. So they turned back again. Gerd had a blue cloak on her. Now when the party was seen and reported Katla, and it was said that there were 13 number, and one had a colored dress, Katla exclaimed, "That troll Garrett has come. I shall not be able to throw glamour over the eyes any more." She started up from her place and lifted the cushion of her seat, and there was a hole and a cavity beneath, into which she thrust Odd, clapped him in the cushion over him, and sat down, saying she felt sick at heart. Now when they came into her room, there were small greetings. Gerd cast off her cloak and went up to Katla, took the sealskin bag which she had in her hand, and drew it over the head of Katla. Then Gerd bade them to break up the seat. They did so and found Odd. Him they took and carried to Bolin's Head, where they hanged him, but Katla they stoned to death under the headland. Okay, yeah. Yeah. That was 32 pages of the Book of Werewolves. Oh. And I'm not sure if all of it got streamed or not because, Twitch kept acting up. But that's as far as I'm going to try to read on this tonight, Cubs. Again, sound issues and everything else, and my very, very poor pronunciation of both Greek and Norwegian. I apologize for. But, yeah. I may read some more of this on the next following Sundays to see if I can get through this book. And I'll still have the fairy tales on Friday nights. So, yeah. Anyway. Man, OBS is lagging like a pain in the ass. Everyone right now is either doing God of War, Elden Ring, or that's pretty much it. No. I don't even know if there's anyone I want to raid. Snowpuff's on. Let me raid her. Yeah, I'll do Snowpuff. Of course, it'd be nice if my picture would show up, but, it's just asking too freaking much, isn't it? And there it is. Anyway, Cubs, I'm going to go ahead and call it for this wonderful session of education. Unless my computer would cooperate. I think it's just OBS acting out mostly. Oh, yeah. No overrated message or anything, so nothing really cut. Come on. Why are you being a pain, OBS? There we go. Anyway, Snowpuff's playing Valorant, so go lurk in on her for a while. Have a good evening, Cubs. I'll see you sometime later this week. Till then, bar's closed. Go to bed. Night.